Hello, everyone. My name is Key Williams. I'm a junior at Harvard College and an undergraduate researcher under Dr. Shen and Shen Labs, working to spread awareness of neuroscience and expanding neuroscience career fields. I'm joined here today with Dr. Davin Phoenix, who is the co-director of the First Generation First Quarter Challenge and associate professor in political science at UC Irvine. His research primarily focuses on the development of the framework of how race influences emotional responses to political developments. Dr. Phoenix, it is an honor to interview you today. Please let me know if I missed any pertinent information.
Thank you for that great intro. I'll just add that relevant to this group, I am a co-director of the University of California, Irvine Center for Neuropolitics.
Okay. To begin, let's start with how you found yourself within your current occupation and your journey of how you got there.
Yeah, I'll try to give the short version. So I think, like many students in college, I felt pretty confident in my major. I chose political science. I was negotiating with my mom who wanted me to be in a hard science major. I just loved learning about politics and government. And I saw myself maybe being connected to that world in some form or fashion, maybe in local government as a quote unquote adult. But, I didn't really know what path I wanted to take after graduating. All of my peers and friends that were poli sci majors were interested in law school, and I knew I didn't have much of an interest in that. And I also felt at an impasse due to my lack of interest in law school because I knew that so many people with careers in government and governance have law degrees. So I was like, I don't really know what to do. Fortunately, I had a couple of professors at my school that were really thoughtful about their students, and I had built up a good rapport with them over the years. And so as my approaching the end of my junior year, I had a couple of meetings with them at their behest where they're like, what's next for you? You showed a lot of promise. And I said, I don't know. Any suggestions? They put grad school on my plate. I never considered grad school. I'd never considered a PhD beyond up to that point. Didn't really understand what that process looked like. Still helped me get a sense of what that process looked like. And the way they presented it was pretty appealing to me. It's basically, you can continue to learn about this stuff and go deeper on it, really, and start to maybe contribute knowledge rather than just be a recipient of knowledge. And so that intrigued me. I had the opportunity to do one of those, kind of prep programs before the summer before your senior year that got me more excited about pursuing a PhD in political science. So I was very gung ho coming out of that summer program. And that senior year, I applied to PhD programs in political science. Ended up going to University of Michigan's joint program in political science and public policy. So I really dove headfirst without even knowing fully what I was getting myself into. So I struggled a bit in grad school because I still didn't have a clear, concrete sense of what this process was like. It's certainly not just a step above college, right? It is really a whole new ball game. And I struggled in particular to kind of find my niche, right? Where do I fit in? Not just as a student, but as a potential scholar, right? What kind of questions do I have to ask, let alone find means to answer? So, building some much needed relationships with faculty that were willing to kind of guide me along the process and willing to reassure me that I was not alone and having that sense of not knowing where I fit in, helping me understand how I might be able to fit in, helping me understand what kinds of work I can contribute to within this field. It kind of helped me kind of develop an interest and, my interest in what I do. So in one of these seminars I was taking, we read this research that talked about if you want to get people more active in politics, which was an interesting question for me, like how do I get people, particularly African Americans and other social marginalized groups, how to get them more active in politics, how to make politics maybe work better for these marginalized groups than it typically does. The research was saying if you want to get people more active in politics, you threaten them with what they stand to lose if they don't participate. That's more effective than giving them the promise of what they stand to gain if they do participate. And I just questioned whether that really applied to Americans specifically. I thought pretty colloquially, I don't know. I mean, many people feel like they don't have much to lose in the process. I don't know how much of a motivator that's going to be. So I didn't think much of it when I had that thought at the time. I thought, oh, that's an idea. I didn't know that could be the idea that I really pursue. So when I came back to that core question I had, like, I don't know if this applies, I had a different way of thinking about it. And that really got me into this world of political psychology. I wanted to argue, maybe I don't think those threat messages or those threat appeals are as effective because those are expected to make people angry, and angry is an action oriented emotion. And I said, I don't think that anger materializes in the same way it's expected to. And I think, that anger, once it materializes, there's a different cost, there's a different potential penalty that African Americans might face for expressing that anger. And so that set me on the path to exploring this idea that I really grappled with my first book about the anger gap, this racial anger gap, right? The ways in which threatening cues about politics are not going to be universally mobilizing because different groups have different levels of resistance to those kinds of messages, and different groups perceive different kind of penalties for their expression of anger publicly. So anger is not going to be this universal mobilizer. And so having this kind of work that seemed to be really relevant to the 2016 election when I started kind of working on the book definitely was relevant to the 2020 Black Lives Matter protests. When I said, when we are going to see anger emerging among Black people, it's going to be shifting them less towards the polls and less towards electoral actions and more towards activism and protests of the like that we saw really explode on the scene. Um, so I got to really kind of be in the zeitgeist, and I got to really connect with different people, both in the world of political science and in the world of psychology and even neurology, to kind of explore what it means when not all these emotions have the same impact on different people because of some of the social realities, social norms, and social costs. So I guess that's a long-winded way of saying, I didn't really see myself being in this world, but um, people kind of opening this world of possibility up to me intrigued me. And I had to find my way through the world, but ultimately finding something that I was passionate about, finding some answers to, which ultimately was me kind of looking at the world around me, saying, I don't know if the world around me is reflected in this research that I'm seeing put out. That's how I was able to find my niche. That's how I'm able to find um, my joy in this work.
That is very inspiring for both me and those watching. And how would you say that your day-to-day life as a neurobiologist, professor, and researcher looks like?
My relationship to neuropolitics is pretty, um, that's a part, right, of my overall agenda. It's a part of my overall teaching, right? My kind of teaching, which I think is the thing that really motivates me and sustains me the most. I love just being in the classroom. Um, I love that sense when you see what you're saying is clicking in the eyes and minds of the students. I love when they can make connections from what we're talking about to what they're living and seeing in their everyday lives. That's what really is my biggest motivator, and I think my biggest joy in the work. And beyond that, beyond the classroom, building relationships with students is very satisfying. Getting to know people beyond what their coursework suggests and kind of getting to know them as people, their dreams, their aspirations, their interests, their hobbies. Some of our connecting with people based on our shared interests, whether it's talking basketball or shared experiences, perspectives, like, oh, what it's like to be an only child, right? What it's like to be first gen college student. That's all super satisfying. I think that's a big part of what I do. In terms of neuropolitics, I think it's my interest in emotions, right, and kind of the political psychology approach to how people feel their way through politics has allowed me to connect with people that I would have otherwise maybe even met on campus where I work at UC Irvine. So with this Center for Neuropolitics, I'm working alongside people in the neurology department in the School of Medicine at UCI, in the psychological sciences department, even in the philosophy departments, right? And we're all trying to speak a common unifying language. That's exciting to me as well, trying to break down some of these artificial barriers across disciplines. We think about the world of like neurology or neurobiology or neuropolitics, neuro whatever, right? You can really, I think, build bridges across these fields and disciplines because we're all fundamentally curious about why our brains do what they do and kind of how we, whether it's through biological or cultural evolution, right? Even through kind of our upbringing, right, and our social context and the forces that socialized us, how we seem to be kind of disposed, right, to have these thoughts, have these attitudes, have these behaviors. It's really fascinating for me to think about how we are wired in particular ways and how that helps us have a pathway to think about how and why we learn what we do and how we might properly unlearn, right, harmful attitudes and thoughts and behaviors. So, you know, for me, my connection to neuropolitics has allowed me to have a more expanded understanding of the human condition. As experts in these fields with PhDs, we have very specialized knowledge. And so I think my experience with the Center for Neuropolitics and with some of these folks I've been able to collaborate with and publish with and kind of put on seminars and talks with has helped me kind of understand these fields I would not have otherwise been exposed to. And I think that makes me even better at what I do, kind of within the field of political science, political psychology. I can borrow from this world, I can borrow from this world and make them legible to my primary audience. I don't know if that answered the question, but so, just thinking that, you know, I try to really emphasize the things I like most about the job. For me, it's teaching. For me, it's really collaboration and learning from others and working with others to try to impart something, both in the classroom and in my writings. I think I try to use my research as a means of teaching as well. So that's what excites me about the job.
For students and others watching this, what advice would you give them about pursuing a career in neuropolitics?
I would say take your time. As someone that went straight into my PhD program from undergrad, I try not to have any regrets, right? Because there's things we learn that make us wiser, and help us grow and develop. That said, I think I probably would have taken some time uh, away from school.